This is day 2 of our Women in Wellness Digital Summit. I am Chasma Smith, for those that don't know. Nice to meet you. I'm the founder of Try and Conquer, which is a platform connecting Black, Indigenous women of color to local outdoor activities so that they can use them as a tool for healing, for health and wellness challenges. So today, we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Brittany Stallworth and Nasira Spells, two people that are just complete badasses in the health and wellness space from my perspective. So I'm very excited to have this conversation with the both of them and be able to dive into some very good topics around mental health. So I'll give a little bit of a introduction to the both of them. So Nasira is a social impact specialist who is passionate about health and wellness and creating healing spaces for Black and Brown folks where space was not once made. Through social impact, her goal is to inspire people to make their health of paramount importance in their lives and gain a stronger understanding of how interconnected social impact is to health outcomes, Some of her favorite activities are yoga, hiking, swimming, walking, and taking new fitness classes. And Nasira is also one of our advisors for Try and Conquer. So not only is she doing all these other things, but she is also an advisor and like helping to add value to building this new startup in the wellness space. Brittany is finishing her medical degree, you guys. She's preparing to enter the field of psychiatry. Through her medical practice, she hopes to use fitness as a form of medicine. Her favorite fitness activity is lifting weights. She also enjoys getting outside and teaching her children how to engage in healthy physical activity habits so they can carry them into adulthood. This was not in her bio, but Brittany also has two businesses. She's also doing great things in health and wellness space in fitness, but she can share more about that as well. So let's give these ladies a warm welcome. Also, before we dive into the discussion, I want to invite folks in our virtual room to feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. And if you're comfortable, share with us how you are managing mental wellness in this like very difficult time for so many people. And if you have questions, utilize that chat box. And then at the very end, we'll go over questions and answers and just have a free flowing dialogue session. So if everyone's all good, let's jump into the discussion. This is for both of you. So first, very easy question, maybe not so easy. What does mental health mean to you?
You want to go first or you want me to go first?
You want to start?
Sure. That is such a loaded question. But I am like a reform. I used to have a lot of like biases around mental health, just like based on my upbringing. I am very Black and very Puerto Rican, and you pray things away and you work harder so they go away, right? When you have like obstacles or mental health challenges, at least that's how I was raised. And I just had a really interesting experience when I started medical school. I started med school with a 7-month-old baby and a dying mom. And I think that just kind of changed my whole perspective on what it means to really be mentally and emotionally healthy. So to me, mental health means dealing, I don't know what the PG rating here is, but this is just how I talk, right? Dealing with my shit, right? So that I do not bring heaviness and baggage into other people's spaces, and so that I can show up in a way that is beneficial for the people that I'm meant to touch and teach, right? And so for me, that's what mental health means.
I love that. I love that. Mental health to me means that I am taking myself seriously and putting my well-being at the forefront of anything that I do, because I can't do anything if I'm on E. And that could look like, not taking time to address an internal issue that I may be feeling, or not taking time to seriously think about how something has impacted me, maybe last week or last month or even years before, and no longer carrying like that kind of mental baggage and weight. that a lot of it may not have even been put on us, especially as Black people and brown folks, where, you know, we came into this world with things that were already given to us. Now, do we have to carry on in it with that stuff? No, we don't. And that's something that is very important to me, and like breaking those generational traumas and generational curses and things that it's really no longer my stuff to carry. And so with mental health, I think it's so important to ensure that I'm pouring into myself all the goodness, all the things that I need to be at my full max and not burning out every day.
Wow, thank you both for those amazing answers. Brittany, I had no idea that you were dealing with so much personally while you're also like trying to further your, you know, professional studies and things. Like, that's a lot. I commend you for your efforts, and just sending you healing and light as you continue to go through the grieving process. Nasira, you made a good point around like, this is no longer your stuff to carry. I think that's something that's so important that so many of us don't really realize. Like, we are carrying things that are not ours. We don't have to carry it anymore. Like, just because it was given to you or you were ingrained in it doesn't mean you have to continue to walk with that burden. So I hope that other folks on the call keep that in mind. Like, you don't have to carry this stuff. Like, let it go. Like, do the work to let it go. So let's talk about your journeys into the medical field. Brittany, specifically, when did you become passionate about mental health and decide to focus on psychiatry in medical school?
Yeah, so I went into med school and there was only two things I knew I wasn't doing. So it was OB, right? Because wasn't nobody gonna call me at 4 a.m. talking about they're having a baby. Not really my ministry, right? And psych, I was like, I'm not going into psych, not because I knew anything about it, but just that, again, just based on how I was raised and the biases that I carried, that just wasn't something I was interested in. And then life happened, and I became a little bit more compassionate towards, I think there's like injuries to mental health and there's mental illness, right? And so those to me are two different conversations. But I think my experience just allowed me to have a little bit more empathy and compassion to both of those, communities. And when I did my psych rotation, I remember after my first day, I called my dad and I was like, well, these are my people. So this is what I'm going into. Because in medicine, that's a lot of it. It's the personalities of the people within the specialty and just kind of what their values are and where you align. And I think I really aligned not only with the other physicians, but also the patients. I think it's hard to, when somebody comes in with a complaint, whatever it is, and why ever they're seeing a doctor, it's hard to address the physical complaints when you don't know their story, you don't know their social background, their socioeconomic background. They leave with like a prescription and a treatment plan, but you didn't ask them if they could read. It's like, so those are like the types of conversations that I like to have with patients. And in psychiatry, I think part of your job is to take the time to do that. You aren't penalized for having long patient encounters. You aren't, it's your job to find out their story. And I really like that because I don't think you can treat a problem unless you know the roots, right? We do a lot of picking at leaves in medicine, and I don't think we get to the roots of things. And so I like psychiatry because you can do that.
So well said. And yeah, I see so many people nodding along like, yeah, that's very true. Like, a lot of times it's very surface level, but you have to dig deeper actually in order to actually treat people. I think also in like a holistic way. Brittany, can you share, sorry, Nasira, can you share more about your journey into health and wellness, and tell us more about House of Spells and how you're helping Black mental health community and others through your wellness practices?
Yeah. Excuse me. So when Brittany and I were at Howard, I was also on the biology track. I was like, I'm going to go to med school. I'm going to become a doctor, and I'm going to help and heal all the Black and brown people. And it's going to be great, and life will be wonderful. Did not work out like that. I found that, I didn't want to only engage with people when they were already sick or when they were already ill. And a lot of that is what is kind of being preached at us in society with like this medical industrial complex that the US is kind of under. And I think it was during my junior year at Howard, I actually learned about a new field that was called public health, which it was only new to me, but it had been around for like centuries, and it just hadn't been like something that I was even aware of. And so when I gained that awareness of public health, I realized like that's my niche, that's my lane, that's where I need to be. Because much to what Brittany said about like with medicine and choosing psychiatry is that people don't ask, well, why, like, can you read the prescription? Like, do you know what's happening with you? Like, we don't ask those questions of the why and getting to that, where public health gets to the why, it gets to the impact, it gets to how did you get here to begin with. And so having already innately always been very inquisitive and very curious about, well, why do people do the things that they do? Or like, why are you already ill? Like, versus let me give you this medication, or let me tell you this thing to just quickly heal it, but then make you consistently have to come back for it. And so that's something that really led me to public health and wanted to get to that why with people. And also like allowing them to have a space where their voices are heard, you know, because we don't get that. And I think that we don't all too often have a moment to just have stillness, to breathe, to regroup, to recalibrate, and then show up in the world, in our lives, for our families, for our friends. And so with House of Spells, that's kind of been like my lane of giving my energy and like myself to other people, to have them, allow them to have a space to just like let it all down, show up as their true selves, not put on the facade or face for anything else, and just like come out so they can be a better person for, you know, themselves and whoever else they're, you know, with in their lives.
Amazing. While you both were giving your answers, what I hear back is a lot of purpose and a lot of passion. And I think it's so amazing when you find that alignment in like what you're supposed to do. And I also hear a lot of like both of you, and myself included, want to be proactive for our community and not reactive of treating the illness. Like, let's treat the people. Yeah. And help them like do the things that they need before they have this issue that's like very chronic or stressful and they can't like manage, and they have to do, you know, things that don't really treat the issue at hand. You know, in this vein, we're talking about all of these issues and, you know, the reactive kind of nature of it. How do we advance Black mental health? How do we advance the Black mental health community, knowing all these things that we do know, both from both of your personal and professional perspectives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can take that. One of the missions that I've been on lately, anytime anybody gives me a microphone or not, the biggest thing for me is understanding why certain things are called what they're called, right? So like we have certain treatment protocols, we have, right, certain diagnoses, and they are, in order to make a diagnosis, people have to check certain amounts of things on the checklist, right? And historically, many of those things are inherently racist, right? So like there's no other way to put it. So when you think about somebody who it means to do well, a lot of my classmates, most doctors, like most people who go into medicine genuinely want to help, right? And so you come out and you graduate and you don't know why the things that you are doing are what they are, right? You don't know why the protocol got reached. You don't know. So this is the protocol in 2021, but what was the protocol in 2020 and why did we stop doing it? Oh, because it killed 1 million people, right? And so like people don't know the history and the lanes and how we reach the places that we are. And so one of the things that like I tell people all the time is like, for example, schizophrenia and psychiatry in general. A lot of the ways that it became like a money-making institution was on the heels of slavery, right? So you have these people who have been released from bondage, and now it's like my granny Gray used to say, right? If they don't tell you you're a criminal, they'll tell you you're crazy. And so schizophrenia, for example, was a way that was, or was a diagnosis that was used to describe Black folks who rebelled, like on plantations, or right? How you are crazy. How could you not love these gracious folks who have enslaved you? And so when you think about how historically significant that is to populations that are still overdiagnosed inappropriately, right? Overdiagnosed and undertreated, you know, those things are like so deeply rooted in racism, right? And in this country's history. And so it's important to have those conversations and be honest about that so that you can heal those wounds, and then you can raise awareness, right? Because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you have to be able to address the pain and address those wounds and just be honest about it, right? You got to call a spade a spade. And I think that's one thing that's hard to do, because unless you, so like I know these things because I go out and I read them, but that's not required med school curriculum. There's no reason for the, you know, for people who don't want to know that, they don't have to know that. And so I think part of the way we heal it is just being really loud about how things got to where they got. You know, and there are some adjectives that get attached to that, but it is what it is. And you just have to own those spaces and just, you know, I'm very comfortable making people uncomfortable. So I think that's part of the journey to really, you know, healing those wounds and getting a better safe space for us in the mental health field.
Something that you said was the end about getting loud, like that really resonated with me, and it just made me think too how important it is for us to get loud, and through doing that, through advocating for ourselves, because often, like, if we don't do it, there's nobody else who will do that. And I hate how historically, like, we have not been listened to. And like, even if you're in a situation where like you have to go to the hospital or get a treatment or surgery or what have you, and you may say like, hey, like that hurts, or like I'm in pain, it's almost as if in medicine we're trained to think that, oh, Black people can endure however much pain, like they're fine, like it's okay. And like that just goes back to slavery and how, you know, as Black women, even we were randomly operated on and just treated without anesthesia, without any kind of things to alleviate such pains. And I think it's so important now that we're in a space and a generation where we are getting louder and we are advocating for ourselves, and we're speaking up against like those injustices that are happening and making sure that our voices are heard, so that we don't just get cast to the wayside and discarded, because we matter. And even if in this space we have to make sure that other folks know we matter, then I'll be doing that, you know.
Absolutely. So well said. Brittany, you said something around getting uncomfortable and making other people uncomfortable around like your needs.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
I have to say, like, that resonated with me in the sense of like having worked in tech for so long. That became one of my favorite things after a while, because I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to be uncomfortable anymore. And so you can be uncomfortable with hearing all of these issues that are very prevalent that I'm dealing with. So it just applies across the board. But yeah, that definitely resonated with me. We have talked about like some misconceptions, right, in the health field, and like different things that Black people have had to endure. One of them, Nasira, you touched on, was, you know, thinking that our tolerance for pain is like some unrealistic, superhuman rate. What are some other common misconceptions people have about mental health and addressing it to this day? Like, we know what has historically been, but what are some that you to think of that are still prevalent today?
I think so one of the biggest ones that I think I find myself in the middle of, I can never really pick a side, is like the use of medications, because when you are like in a clinical setting, you see how much these medications really do help people, particularly, so like some things, right? I say, this is what I tell patients, right? Like to a certain extent, right? Everybody is a doctor, right? So when you come to particularly like an MD, right? Or an allopathic or an osteopathic physician, what we are trained to do is throw medications, right, at pathology, right? So something is wrong, and now I'm going to give you a medication to treat it. So you can't really be mad at an allopathic physician for doing their job, right? If you want a different treatment course, go to a different doctor, a different type of doctor. And so I often find myself like in that, you know, because some people, the use of medication is important, particularly for people. So when you think about, for example, some of the people that really, and I'm not, depression and anxiety, those things are very important and they affect people very deeply, like on a daily basis, and they need to be treated and they need to be addressed. But I talk about like the acutely psychotic people who are usually Black, brown, and poor, right? More likely to be incarcerated, more likely to either be victims of or perpetrators of domestic assault, and more likely to like end up in jail for it, right? Or killed for it. I think those medications play an important role. And so like that's one of the stigmas that I think, the misconceptions that exist. It's just that like all medication is bad. And I think that's one of those conversations that I'm often torn because I understand where the lack of trust comes from. I totally get it. And then on the other end, you see the outcomes of when those medications are used correctly. So it's not that, but the other misconception is that we always need medication, and that's not true, right? Sometimes you're not depressed. Sometimes you need to go for a run and eat some broccoli, right? Like that is also a thing. And then other times you really are depressed and you need a therapist and you need a psychiatrist and so it's like, there are like fine lines to walk. But one of the things that I tell people all the time is just that I am a recovering superwoman, right? And so I don't like the misconception that like people tell me all the time, like, you're so strong. So I think that's one of the misconceptions in mental health, right? Is that strong is a compliment. I don't think it is, right? I think it means that I have been made to endure some things that weren't mine to carry. I'm ready to put this shit down, right? And so those are some, there are so many. I think this is probably one of those questions we could talk about for the whole hour. But those are the ones that come to mind right off the top.
Thank you. I'm just like baffled. It is very, as you were talking, I'm just like thinking about all the people that, are so anti-medicine, and then people who like that's their first go-to.
Yeah.
And it's like, there is a medium ground in between that, and there is no one size fits all. And yes, you should talk to people and talk to specialists and try to find what works for you. But I'm just like sitting here nodding along like, oh my God, yeah. And also I asked the question to the group, are there any other recovering superwomen in here? And yes, that's me. It's not a title or a cape that I care to wear. I don't even know when I picked that up, or if that was one of those things Nasira talked about that was just kind of like passed along to you from previous generations, but I don't want it. That's not a title I want anymore. So let's talk about mental health and the outdoors and fitness, since Brittany, you touched on that, like sometimes you just need to go for a run and eat some broccoli. What do you...
Food.
What's that?
There's healing in food.
There is.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. People would be surprised at how much changing your diet and maybe even your relationships with food has on the way you think about, yourself and how your body feels.
Yeah.
But
so without getting too sciencey, I'm gonna just interrupt. So people don't understand, like, when you talk about brain health and the things that make your brain run, right? Like the serotonin, the dopamine, right? Serotonin is the happy one. It's the one that helps you be happy and helps you rest. And most of that is in your gut, not in your brain, believe it or not. So think about how important your relationship is with food when you think about how your brain works. It's super important. It's like actually science. That's not an opinion. That is actually true. Yeah.
And that's why I take probiotics that are good for the gut health, good for my immune system, and just keeping it like all flushed out so that you're not getting that like lethargic, oh my God, I don't want to do anything feeling. Because I can know when I've eaten certain foods, it'll literally have me feeling like, oh, I could just like sleep the rest of the night or like the rest of the day. And when you think about it, that's not really how food should make you feel. Like it's okay to have comfort foods, in moderation, but to constantly feel like a draining versus like an energized feeling from food, nah, we gotta do better with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How can let's ask this question. How can being out in nature act as a healing agent against all of the different external things that we're kind of facing in the world that impact our mental health?
I'll let Nasira answer this first because I feel like my answers are always so long-winded that we gotta move on. And then I'll.
Now we want to hear your loud voice, girl.
No, sometimes when it's okay if you like the only one, but it's like so many useful perspectives here. I just want to listen.
I feel it. So nature as a healing agent. Well, one, I want to say that I think of myself as a mermaid because if you can have me in somebody's ocean at any point in time, that's what I'm going to choose. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to be in the water. And there's healing powers in like water, for instance. There's healing being out in nature and like smelling the trees, smelling the flowers, taking in all the other external senses and things that are around you. And like something I like to do daily is get outside and go for a walk for at least an hour. Like if I can just take some time out of my day and dedicate it to walking down the street, I have a little route down the street to my neighborhood park. I'll walk around the park a couple of times. I'll see like kids who are out, in school now and doing like baseball after like people playing basketball or just like in the park on the jungle gym or in the maze or whatever. And like taking all of that in can really help you to kind of come down from whatever work you may have had or other obligations you may have had that kind of kept your mind like in that like boxed in zone. And being outside, it just helps me like let all of that go. It helps me just like really focus in on like, this is what my mind, my body, and my soul needs right now. And it's really helping me to release like those good, like Brittany mentioned, like the serotonin and all the other hormones and things that are going to help me like feel better and feel really good. And someone said found fresh air therapy during the pandemic. I know it's the best. Like that was one of my first major things that I would do in this pandemic. It's like, okay, we can't go nowhere. So like, I'm gonna just go outside and just like figure out what's around my neighborhood, because like almost this time last year, I had just moved into my apartment, like moved to California. So it was really like figuring out, okay, what's around me and what can I do in these times where you can't go out to eat like you would, you can't like really be in large groups or around folks like you may have once before. So just having to dedicate that time to like getting outside, going on hikes. It may not be easy depending on where you're at and like how often you can get outside for things and how safe it may be. But I think that there's so much that the outdoors can give you that is healing that we need to take advantage of always. And it's free, like nature is free. So get outside.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with the ocean part. I'm like, I'm big on that. And I think so I live in Detroit and it'd be cold like 9 months of the year here. Well, 8, we'll give it 8. We'll do 4 months of like a mixture of summer and spring. And so that's tough. Those months are tough on me, right? And so I think one of the reasons outside is so important is that when you don't have it, you can recognize how much of an effect it takes, right? And an impact that it has on your health. And then I just think back to like, and I'm not a good old days type of person. I really don't get super nostalgic about the like past or anything, but I think like back to when I was a kid, when I wasn't like anxious, depressed, or had a bunch of thoughts, and we were just outside all day, like on bikes or not, right? Like just finding stuff to do. And like I think about my children who like watch kids play outside on YouTube, and I'd be like, no, like that's not what we're gonna do, right? Like we're going to go outside and do hood rat things with our friends. So it's an interesting, when you think about some of the things and some of the health epidemics that have turned their heads up over the last several years, it almost seems directly related to the fact that we don't go outside and we don't engage in nature in a lot of ways. So I find that to be very interesting.
All very good and amazing points. And Brittany, like you said, yeah, a lot of the health outcomes right now are very much tied to access to green space and the fact that we don't, get outside enough. Like, I hate to throw my, my sister under the bus, but I noticed like my nephews on their mobile devices so much. And I'm like, you guys want to go outside and play? Like, like, no, we'd rather look at our screens. And I find that so interesting that, I understand, like, of course, everything is online. We're utilizing online right now to have this session, but studies show like that like people that have access to green space are not only healthier, but they're happier. In the communities that don't have access to green space, guess what? They're Black and brown. And that's, also tracks to Black and brown people are disproportionately affected by the high risk illnesses, diseases like heart disease and diabetes and et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely nature can be a healing agent, and it's absolutely why we're all in this space and why Try and Conquer exists and why we're trying to build this amazing thing to connect Black and brown people to the outdoors, to use it as something to just like have space for yourself, for your mental well-being, and to help you build like these habits of just going for a walk. Very simple things, or just getting outside, going on your porch and just taking a couple deep breaths for yourself. Like all these little things matter and make such a big difference in our lives and how we operate. So since we're talking about the outdoors, what are some of your favorite outdoor fitness activities?
I bought my kids a wagon. It's like one of those big red wagons. So we like go on walks. And sometimes I just move my weights outside. So I'll just literally lift. Well, actually, in the summer, that's usually the only place I lift, because it's just nice to get sun, particularly since I'm starved of it for most of the year here. But I really enjoy walks, particularly with my kids. It's just so much fun, and watching them like identify stuff. It's like it almost does something for my mental and emotional health, just watching how like excited they get about a bird, right? Like even that, there's still like there's just so much there are so many. I think when you get so bogged down with like professional goals and life and the ripping and the running, it's just so nice to like appreciate a bird, right? And so I think that's what I appreciate most about like outside spaces and going with my kids. Those two things combined do something for me often, because it just be like, they are so excited about this damn squirrel. Like, this is amazing, right? Like, so you can appreciate that.
Yeah, that's dope. And like, I love how like hearing like how your kids help you sorry, your kids help you tend to like your own inner child, and like the things that as an adult we forget how much they used to excite us, and just taking that time to appreciate the little things. That's really good to hear. Like your kids help you remember those little things and show your gratitude for it. Some of my favorite activities, I kind of put it in my bio earlier, but love to always share and talk about it, is I love going outside for hikes. I love practicing yoga outdoors too. That's really dope. Like, especially when the sun is just kind of at its peak and it's hot and it's just like radiating down on you, you're getting all that free vitamin D. Like, that's a really great feeling. I love going swimming. I was sad because like my apartment complex has a pool, and so like I've literally just stared at my pool all last summer and all year, and I'm hoping that like this year it's open so that I can get in the pool, because that's a great way to exercise and do things too. Yeah, those are some of my favorite things, like going for daily walks, like I said, or like even putting together like outdoor hikes with friends. One of my friends, Brianna, is on here. She and I just went on a hike here in California about a month and a half ago, so that was really cool.
Thank you for sharing. Those are all amazing activities. I feel you, Brittany, with like the little kids and how they get so amazed at things you probably take for granted as an adult. Like we've seen birds and squirrels for however long, and it just like makes you appreciate things differently, and also kind of like hone in and like let go of the other stuff and like look at it from someone else's more innocent eyes. And I think that's such a beautiful thing when you have that opportunity to experience that with children or with your own children. Nasira, you talked about, yoga. I have a question for you. It's around meditation, and I wanted to know if you have ever practiced, or for both of you actually, have you ever practiced a form of meditation outdoors? And if so, what method did you follow, and how does it make you feel afterward?
Yeah, great question. My most consistent forms of meditating outdoors, it's really been like, I think of walking as a meditation, honestly. Like, that's my time. Like, meditation, I think that people have a lot of misconceptions in thinking that meditation is just you sitting like this and you're just not thinking, you're just stillness and that's it. Like, one, that's not always realistic. Two, everybody can't shut their mind out like, on a drop of a dime like that. And that's okay. For me, meditation can be like, I just take time, like I get my headphones in, I got a podcast playing, and I'm just listening to that, and I'm walking. I may have my phone on do not disturb. I may not be looking at social media, and I'm just fully tuned in and present for like what my mind is taking in. And then just thinking about like how my body is feeling as I'm walking. And like, I am very in tune with my body. And so I think about like, okay, when I'm first getting out, I may have been trying to drag my feet about doing it. But then as I get into the motion and movement of it, I'm thinking about like how my thighs are warming up, how the soles of my feet are taking in the pounding of the pavement, how the grass might feel. And like, I love just sitting and grounding in nature. And like, that can be literally taking your shoes off, taking your socks off, and just putting your feet in the grass. And that's a great way also to meditate. And so meditation doesn't always have to be this like well put together, like, oh, I'm sitting, I'm not thinking of anything, it's completely still. But it can be through walking, it can be through listening to a podcast, it can be like sitting on your couch and kind of just like decompressing, it can be drinking tea like I've been doing, since our session. Like, there's so much to do. And like with the outdoors, I think those are some of the easiest ways with meditation, is like thinking of it as when you're walking, or if you're hiking, if you want to take like a break midway and kind of just sit in the midst of where you're at and just be present, just being present.
I like that. So I think I'm glad you said that meditation looks a lot of different ways, because I tell people that all the time, right? Like, my daily meditation it's outside technically, because I'm in the car right before I go in the house, and I'm rolling down my windows and I'm preparing. Like, I'll eat so like one of the things I do, mom cheat code, eat your snacks in the car before you go in the house so you don't have to share them. So like, that is my form of meditation. Literally, before I go inside, I will sit outside, gather my thoughts, take deep breaths. And one of the biggest things for me is like, I don't like to bring work home. Right. There's no need to like take whatever I went through during that day out on these little humans. And they bring their own tests, right? Because they're little humans. And so that time in the car outside with my windows rolled down, whether it be in silence or with Gucci Man in the background, is very important time. Very important. And it's not to be sacrificed. And so I'm glad she said that, because meditation looks a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. And even when so like, we have a pretty big backyard, and so they have like a play set back there. And I think of like, when I think back to like just I think everything comes back to parenting for me, because I'm just so consumed in it all the time. But like, I think of when the moments I'm so thankful, and it's like when I'm sitting there just looking at them playing and doing their thing outside. And then being thankful that like it's outside and I don't have to clean my house and they're doing whatever they're doing. So there's a lot of different ways that you can find joy, right? In the things that nature provides. And to me, that's really symbolic, because when you do things in nature, it lessens your workload, right? And I think that that's really like probably my favorite thing about the outside, is the way it takes things off of my plate.
I love that. You deserve that.
Yeah, you do. You deserve to sit in your car with your snacks, girl. Have your you time.
No, it's mine. Yeah.
I have to share all the time, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. I love that you both mentioned that, it doesn't look one way. There's no cookie cutter box, like this is what meditation is, and if you don't do X, Y, and Z, then you're not meditating. And I also love, Brittany, that you brought up Gucci Mane. Like, for me, like, meditation is just however you tap in with yourself. That could be listening to your ratchet music, that could be twerk, whatever you do for you is how you meditate. It's all a part of like self-care and putting yourself first. So thank you for sharing that, and like making sure we emphasize that it is what works for you, and not like, you decide what that is, essentially. So you both are a huge inspiration, and I wanted to know what has helped you to kind of get where you are as an inspiration for others, and what advice would you have for others who want to go in a similar direction, either career-wise or, personally?
That is, I don't even know where to start. Go ahead. I'm gonna just sit here.
So I think first, I want to kind of answer the inspiration part. I would say what inspires me most is just knowing that I have gifts that I want to share with other people, and that other people should be able to engage with me and me with them.
Mm.
And knowing that no matter how, if it's the first interaction, the second, third, whatever, like that there's going to be something that they're receiving from me. And I know that just because like throughout life, like I've always had friends or people say to me like, Nasira, I love your energy, or like, can we hang out, or like, can I come to you about this? And it's just always attracted to me. And I think what inspires me to keep going and doing this is knowing that even if I've only touched one person, that matters. And that's important to me. And that's enough for me to like know that I need to keep going. I need to keep making like weekly meditations for folks. I need to keep offering Reiki healing for people. I need to keep, you know, advocating for Black women's health and like putting out resources and having conversations like this so that other people who may be like internally thinking like, oh, maybe I can't break out into that field that I'm passionate about, or like maybe I can't do this, and like really casting those doubts aside and just letting people know like, no, you can, whether you look like me, whether you look like somebody else, doesn't matter. Like you have something that nobody else can give, and that's what's more matters most, and it's so important.
Yeah, I agree. I think so my biggest motivation probably or inspiration is just the fact that I don't take for granted that I can make certain decisions and do certain things, right? That I'm within the sound, I don't know what just felt, I'm within the sound mind and body to do certain things. And so I just don't take that for granted. I've seen it. Particularly like so when I think about like my mom's experience, for example, 18 months before she passed away, she was completely healthy, and within 18 months she lost her ability to walk, talk, eat, right, do things by herself, but also her ability to like many of her cognitive abilities. And so I just never take for granted that like I can go for a walk, right, or that I can make a decision to act a certain way, because some people don't have that type of control, and it's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. So I think my biggest inspiration is because I can. And I would just encourage anybody who wants to go really in any direction to remember that, right? You can, and you are worthy, right? Even if you're not ready yet, you might have to prepare, right? You might have to get ready, but you got it, and you're worthy.
I think something else too that came up is always maintaining and having gratitude. Like Brittany, what you said about just being like thankful that you have mobility. Like I think the other day I literally tweeted like, I'm grateful for having full mobility without any other kind of like outside help needed.
Yeah.
And it's things that may seem as simple as that it's putting messages and signals out to the like universe, God, spirit, higher being, whatever, people's beliefs are, but it's putting that energy out to God and letting God know like you're grateful for whatever you have in this moment, in this time in your life. And that's also inspiration enough for me, is just having that gratitude. And when you have gratitude, like things start to also continuously show up for you in your life in unexpected ways, in ways that you have maybe directly asked for. But it's like maintaining that gratitude and knowing that what shows up for you is meant for you is so important too.
Absolutely. I can attest to that gratitude mindset. Like I, at one point had to really, before when I was struggling with it, I would always look at things as like, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that, instead of like, oh, I get to do this. Like I get to go outside because I have access to it, because I am, like Nasira said, I am able-bodied and I have full mobility. Like all of these things are like having a mindset of gratitude. And that's something that, yeah, for sure helps as you're, on your journey. So I want to ask you both about your challenges, and I want to know from you, what's the biggest challenge you think is in the wellness industry at the moment? I have my own, like I could go off on this topic, but what do you both think?
I think ignorance is probably the biggest And that can be explained in a lot of different ways, but just a lot of the stigmas and the biases, right? When people internalize a lot of things, and then people don't know what they're historically rooted in, kind of like what I talked about in the beginning. So I think that's a big barrier. It's probably just ignorance and um, just the lack of conversations like these, right? And spaces to uh, get educated.
For sure.
I would say I agree completely with that. Like ignorance is not always bliss, even though that's been a saying. And like another misconception or just like challenge in the wellness space, I think that there's a lot of buzzwords that have kind of come up where like the wellness industry, a lot of people are starting to capitalize more on like kind of basics, like case in point, self-care, and how that is like tossed around in so many different ways, and it'll make you feel like, oh, self-care is bubble baths and face masks and painting your nails, or like doing things that, yes, that's self-care, those are forms of it, absolutely, but it's much deeper than that. Like self-care is also going to therapy. Self-care is going to the doctor when you know you haven't been in like 2.5 years and you need to get yourself checked out. Self-care is canceling plans to go and have lunch with your friend because you need to decompress, or like going for that daily walk because your mental needs that. Like those are other forms of self-care. And so I think the challenge with wellness is how so many people are really kind of trying to put their foot in the door and like get into it, but not really always having that genuine passion and concern for the people that they're attracting and the audience that they're really speaking to, and using buzzwords and things to more so capitalize off of it versus this is really what I want to do and who I want to do it for, and I'm going to go forward with that in mind always.
Absolutely. That's a little bit of what my personal feelings are with it. I see some of the challenges are, one, the people are ignorant. They don't know what they don't know, right? And then there's a lot of opportunity for people to take that ignorance and try to capitalize on it, and like packaging pretty things and selling it to people as a cure-all, or selling it to people as a, you need this in order to feel better, or you need this because this is what self-care is. And I see a lot of times people blindly like following that, and it it does more harm than good when you just like sell people something versus like empowering them with information or access. And that's something that I really want to try to minimize with Try and Conquer. It's like really empowering people to have agency over their bodies and agency of how they look at wellness and fitness, and like moving their selves and connecting to nature and connecting to the spaces that they have access to. So fully agree with both of you on your points. What are some practical pieces of advice that you would give to someone starting out on addressing their mental health or their own exercise routines?
I'm gonna let the doctor start with that.
Um, so many places to start. I think the biggest thing, as far as like mental health, um, boundaries. So I think it's good to like just take stock of, when I talk to this person, how do I feel, right? Do I feel full when I get off the phone with this person, or do I feel anxious? And just recognizing and getting comfortable with your boundaries, so that when other people put up a boundary, it doesn't feel like an insult, right? You can recognize that as self-care for somebody else and for you. I think that's a really good place to start. And then therapy, right? So there are different ways. There's in-person therapy. There are like web therapies. They're very expensive. Well, some of them, but sometimes they have like ways, like, so for example, if you're in school or you work for certain nonprofits, you can get discounts. So like those are good ways to find therapists. And then I think taking care of your physical health is often a good window into your mental health. So sometimes those physical health journeys start because people want to lose weight. They want a bigger butt. They want some abs. But usually in the midst of that, I think people figure out that taking care of themselves feels good, right? They're less tired, they're less anxious, they are less depressed. And I think most people, when they start working out, one of the things that I tell people all the time is, right, so I tell like my clients, right, like your tolerance for the pain of the workout is going to increase, and the tolerance for BS out there is going to decrease, right? Because the better you feel about yourself, the less you're willing to accept things that don't feel good to you. And so I think those are good places to start. And then if you are having like an acute health crisis, like a mental health crisis, getting help, going to see a psychiatrist, right? Or a lot of times people can go directly to their family doctors. Like a PCP is usually, if you need more serious help, they can refer you to a psychiatrist that can be trusted. So I think those are good places to really get started. It's like checking your boundaries, respecting others, and taking better care of yourself.
Honestly, I agree with all that she said. That was like hitting the nail on the head. I love what you said about boundaries. That was something that I thought about as well, and just making sure that you honor that. And I think even going back to what we mentioned earlier is speaking up, advocating for yourself, and seeking those resources, like talking to a friend or family member, saying like, "Hey, I'm really dealing with something that I don't know how to handle on my own." Could be a really great gateway into getting those resources that are going to be most beneficial to you. And whether it starts out with, immediately going into therapy, or if it starts out with, getting a buddy to go on a daily walk with, or just like an accountability person and someone you can say like, "Hey, I'm doing this walk today. You want to come with me?" Or like, "Hey, like, can you talk to me on the phone, like while I'm walking," just to kind of keep yourself, engaged in doing the things that you need to do for yourself, or even going to people and looking at ways to change your diet, and how, like, what am I eating for lunch today? Or like, how can I replace like certain things in my meals, throughout the week and whatnot, I think are great ways too.
Y'all are so dope. Like, y'all are so amazing. I love that both answers always kind of play off of each other. And so one of you will say one thing and it's like, "Oh yeah, let me add to that." And it's always like so helpful. Like, it's so much great information. For folks that want to stay connected with both of you, where can they find you afterward? On social media, LinkedIn? Let us know.
Yeah. I shine on Instagram. So I brain dump daily. So my Instagram, I can put it in the chat too. Here, I'll type it out. And then I can also share my email. Those are probably the two best ways to get in touch with me and to stay connected with me. I'm probably more responsive to Instagram messages than I am to text messages. So
Same. It's terrible, but it's true.
Just what it is.
Honest. We're honest with ourselves. You gotta be.
Nasira, where can we find you? Or did you put it in the chat already?
I also put it in the chat. So my business Insta is House of Spells, and like my last name is Spells. Is if you didn't know that, you can see that too. But
see what you did there.
Huh?
Said I see what you did there.
You see what I did there? And then you can also hit me up through email, and I think like most people do have my number too. So call me, beat me if you want to reach me.
Love it. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Before we close, I want to mention a couple things. So Try and Conquer, we have an app that's in beta right now. It is accessible through your phone or a tablet's browser at tryxconquer.app. We are currently seeking outdoor ambassadors to join us on our mission to ensure that all women can fit in outdoors by leading local outdoor activities. So if that's you, please head over and navigate to become an ambassador on the app and sign up. Also, since you've joined, you're now in our ecosystem, so we'll be regularly engaging with you. So that means inviting you to participate in our first survey to really make sure that we're building the right features and tools for this specific audience. So please join and take that survey that we'll send out afterward. And I think that's it. Thank you all for joining. If there's questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, or sorry, raise your hand to unmute yourself. And yeah, otherwise, thank you. Oh, it looks like someone's.
Thank you for putting this together, Jasmine. Like, I'm happy to be on this journey with you and bringing these kind of conversations to the forefront, and something that is so needed in Black and brown spaces for women, and we need this, and I'm grateful for it. And tomorrow we have another talk. What time is tomorrow's talk, Jasmine?
I believe it is at 1, but it is at 1.
Is that one?
Tomorrow is building mental resilience to overcome anything, or virtually anything. This is with a woman by the name of Carrie Michael. She talks about her experience from immigrating from Ethiopia to the UK at a very young age, and her journey through corporate, and how all of that has really helped her to build mental resilience, and how you can also do the same thing, because we all deal with a lot, and we could use all the help we can from folks who look like us, right?
Always. Agreed. Agreed. So tap in, lovely people. If you haven't noticed, my Instagram has been flooded with Try and Conquer this past week with all in details. So you might be sick of me, but oh well, come and promote. So from now until I think Sunday the 8th or Monday the 8th,
Monday.
we
Yeah.
have those conversations and those talks. So if you get a chance, like just join. The Zoom links are in the Try and Conquer bio on Instagram. It's free to register, and it's a great way for us to also just stay in touch with you all, so we can get things off the ground and get y'all to be a part of it in outdoor exercise. And maybe y'all could become ambassadors in your cities. I see some folks who would definitely, I know Aminata, she does running, and I know she in Detroit right now. So like, sure to go.
Awesome. I love it. Yes, please go ahead and promote. I've seen it. We've gotten tagged in a lot of things too. So it's great to like see how people are engaging with this series and the session. So very much looking forward to the rest of the week and all of the other sessions we have planned.
Yes, and thank y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
Yes,
Thank
you so much for being a part of this. Really
folks are saying thank you for the insightful and authentic discussion. You are very welcome. Thank you for joining and being part of this virtual space with us. Folks are following you, Brittany.
Sweet.
Nice. Thank you for this discussion. Thank you for joining. Thank you, everybody, for joining. It looks like there aren't any questions, which is also cool. But if you have them, you know where to reach any of us. Thank you all. Have a great day. Hopefully you can join any of the other sessions and or become an ambassador. And with that, I'll leave you for the rest of the evening or afternoon, sorry.